In this video, I'm going to focus on one of the most frustrating things in carp fishing, and that's the dreaded hook pull. Now for me, the number one cause of hook pulls is blunt or damaged hooks. I'm going to show you all the tips and tricks that I use to minimize the risk of hook pulls. You can never eliminate them 100%, but it's really easy to reduce their risk significantly. For me, hook pulls are very rare. Out of 100 fish, I expect to bank 98 or 99 of them. So I might suffer 1 or 2 hook pulls per 100 carp. If I wind the clock back 13, 15 years, something like that, hook pulls were a regular part of my fishing and I hated it. The problem is solvable, it's straightforward, and I'm going to show you how to do it. Now it's really easy to say that all you need is a sharp hook, but in reality, what does a sharp hook actually look like? How do we tell a sharp hook from a blunt hook? So here's what a sharp out of the packet hook looks like, and I'd have no issues with fishing that as is. So this is what a blunt hook looks like straight out of the packet. Hopefully you'll be able to see that the end is slightly damaged, slightly folded over, and although it might feel sharp, for me I would not use this hook without doing some work to it. So this is what a hook looks like after it's caught a fish. It's almost been bent 90 degrees to the original angle of the point. It's been folded back on itself. I would not use this hook again. I would resharpen that because that damage is recoverable. This is what a hook looks like after a careless retrieve. What's probably happened is that I've caught the hook on a rock or a stone and I've literally cracked the end off. For me, this hook is not recoverable and I would just recycle it. So in my experience, out of those 4 hooks, only one is capable of catching a carp and landing it 100% of the time. 2 of them are capable of getting a run and you might land the carp, but you also might lose it through a hook pull. The one that's been damaged on the retrieve, where the point has been completely cracked off, for me, that is not even capable of getting a pickup from a carp. It's just going to get rejected every time. So hook sharpness is really important. It's one of the absolute basics of our sport. But there are certain situations when it becomes absolutely critical. It becomes the difference between literally catching and blanking. If you're used to fishing venues which have a soft bottom when there's no gravel or no rocks, you'll tend to find that the fish have fairly soft mouths because they're only used to feeding in soft silt. When you come to a venue like Beausoleil, we have a lot of gravel, a lot of rocks, and it is a really hard bottom. The harder the bottom, the harder the carp mouths become over time. They have to adapt, they have to evolve. When you're fishing for carp with hard mouths, hook sharpness becomes absolutely critical. It literally here is the difference between catching and blanking. So if you can learn to pay attention to your hook points and keep them in tip-top condition, you'll simply catch more carp and you'll lose very few. The quality of modern carp hooks has come a long way in the last few years. I don't have to go very far back and I wouldn't consider even fishing with a hook that came out of the packet. I'd always hand sharpen it from scratch. There are better options nowadays, but don't be fooled into thinking that every hook that comes out of the packet is absolutely perfect, because it's not. The most important thing is a very sharp hook to start with. If it's not perfect, it might not catch you a fish, and if it does catch you a fish, you might suffer a hook pull. So the first thing I do is take the time to go through a packet of hooks, check every single one, correct any ones that are less than perfect, and then I'll arrange them neatly in a box so that I know I can just go to that box, grab a hook, and it'll be perfect. Now it's really important to check these hooks in two planes. It's no good just looking it up from the side and thinking that they're perfect, because if the damage is in the other plane that's 90 degrees to that, then you're going to miss it. It's really important to have the best lighting conditions possible to do this. So outside is great. It's very overcast today, but it's better than being in the back of the bivvy or being inside. It also helps if you've got a light background. I've got plenty of light coloured stone in front of me, that works well. Or I can hold the hook up to the sky and see it in silhouette. That works really well too. So what I've done here, I've inspected 2 packs of shod twisters with a loop, and at the bottom here we've got 3 perfect hooks. Above we've got 5 near perfect hooks, and at the back there we've got 2 hooks that need a little work with a hone. So out of 10 hooks I've got 8 hooks that I would fish with confidently straight out the packet. Those 2 I wouldn't fish without the packet. I'd need to give them a little lick with a hone before they were any good. And it's the same story over here. 4 perfect, 4 near perfect, and 2 that need a little tickle. So we've got a lovely box of inspected, very, very sharp hooks to fish with. The last thing I want to be doing is casting rigs into rocky areas that are going to absolutely destroy them. So for me, it's really important to understand where I'm fishing and what I'm fishing over. In order to minimise the risk of hook pulls, I'll avoid rocky areas and areas that are going to cause me problems. I'd much rather fish over some sand or fine gravel or some smooth silt, and I'm going to have far less problems with running the risk of hook damage. So I'm going to get this rod ready to put out on the spot later when I'm ready to fish. I've chopped the old rig off that I was fishing with last night because I need to replace it. So we got the lead on the lead system, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap it around the distance sticks and then just have a little practice cast to make sure that I've got the spot absolutely dialed in. The last thing I want to be doing is putting on a brand new rig and then doing some test casts on a spot with the rig that I'm actually going to be fishing with. Now I got that right first time, but I'm well accustomed to casting exactly at that spot and hitting that mark. Whenever I change spots and distances, I like to have a few casts just to make sure that I'm absolutely dialed into that spot before I tie a rig on, before I run the risk of getting the cast wrong with a freshly tied rig. Now miscasts happen. Not every cast is going to be exactly perfect. What matters is what you do when you get it wrong. So what I'm going to try and show you is I'm going to make a cast. I'm going to try and purposely miscast it, but what I want to prevent is I want to prevent this lead and this rig hitting the bottom, because if I can prevent it hitting the bottom, then I won't have to inspect the hook, I won't have to resharpen the hook, or I won't have to change the rig. So when I make the cast, I'm following the lead in the air. If it's going too left or too right, then I'm going to have to prematurely stop that cast, and that means slowing it down in a controlled manner with feathering. I've got quite long fingers, so I can just feather with my spool. If you've got shorter fingers, you might have to use your left hand to cup the spool in order to do this, but I'm just going to do it with my index finger. Right, let's have a little go at this. I'm going to purposely cast it too far left and too hard, and I'm going to try and slow it down and prevent the lead hitting the bottom. Wind. There we go, easy. So I saw it was going wrong, I applied the brakes, I lowered the rod, and before the lead had actually hit the water, I'd already flipped that bail arm closed and I was winding. The lead didn't come anywhere near the bottom. I've got 4.5 foot, 5 foot of water there, so I've got a bit of water to play with, but there was no way that that lead was going to hit the bottom. On a shallow spot, this is really quite hard to do. The more depth of water, the more time you've got to play with. Right, let's try and get this one on the money now. I'm going to show you some mistakes that I've seen made when putting a rod on the rests and when putting on a back lead. Okay, so the very first job is to take the line out of the line clip. I've gone round twice, so I need to come off twice. This stage, it's really important that we do not move the lead at all. So if there was a big wind and there's been some bow in the line, then sure, correct that. But you must not move the lead. So my casting position here is a little off centre to my bank sticks. So what I'm going to do, now that I've mended the bow in the line, I'm going to open the bail arm again, and I'm just going to manage the line, tick it off the spool with my finger as I walk to the bank sticks. And I just want to very carefully mend the line because I want a straight line from my rod to my spot. I don't want a big bow in it because that's going to compromise my bite indication. So I'm going to show you a couple of ways I've seen this basic act done incorrectly. I've seen this done a lot with guys that use bait runners. I don't use bait runners, but I've got a free spool facility, so I've just slackened off the spool, and what they've done, they've tightened down to the lead, they've flicked it onto bait runner, and they've just kind of drawn it back. The clutch has been spinning, they've put it on the rests, and there we go, stick the bobbin on, stick the alarm on, they're fishing. Obviously it depends how aggressively you've got the bait runner set, but you should never be pulling line off your bait runner like that anyway. You're also running the risk of moving the lead, and it's just completely unnecessary. So if I was fishing this as a tight line situation, what I'd do is this. I'd make sure that there's a bow in the line, I'd hold the rod up like this, and I'd just very gently wind down, take a little slack out, get him on the alarm, get him on the backrest. Then I'd clip the bobbin on. Then I'd very, very carefully just take the slack up, get the line to come round, get my bobbin tension right, put it in the line clip and turn the alarm on. When I'm doing this process, I'm being really, really careful not to move that lead. When you're using back leads at medium range, which I do an awful lot of, it's really important that you use back leads of the right kind of size. I'm fishing that spot, it's about 35 yards that spot actually. I've got a 3-ounce lead on there because it's a fairly clean spot, and I'm just going to clip on a little 3/4 ounce back lead. If I was fishing a very light lead of 1.5 ounce, the last thing I want to be doing is clipping on something crazy like a 2-ounce back lead or even a 3-ounce back lead, because the chances of moving that lead are going to be too high. So you want a big lead out there, small back lead back here, and when you clip it on, just do so really carefully so that you don't run the risk of moving the lead. So I always make sure I've got some slack in the line. Rod tip tucked under my arm, holding the rod tip up, and we just want to slide it down the line in a nice controlled manner like that. So back lead on, and I'm going to use exactly the same procedure, making sure I've got some slack in the line, rod at an angle, on the alarm, on the backrest, bobbin on, take up a little bit of slack here, just tighten very gently down to the back lead, get the right kind of drop on the bobbin that I want, in the line clip, delk him on, and we're ready to go. Let's talk about recast procedure. Now, eliminating hook pulls is all about preservation of the quality of the hook point. The last thing I want to do is damage that hook. because if I damage the hook, I've either got to resharpen the hook or change the hook. So there's some simple little tricks that I do when it comes to recasting. Now it doesn't matter whether a rod's been in the water for a few hours or 2 days. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to carefully pick up the rod, unhook the bobbin. I'm trying to avoid unnecessarily pulling the line in a sharp manner because I don't want to move that lead. I'm then going to very carefully lift the back lead off the lake bed, put a little bit of tension in the line. I'm going to lower the rod and then I'm going to give it a good flick, and I'm going to try and flick the lead off the spot and then wind it gently back to me without damaging the rig at all. That's the aim of the game. Let's have a go now. Okay, so this is the procedure I use. First of all, we're going to turn off the alarm, obviously. Then I'm going to unclip the bobbin here. I'm then going to pop the rod out of the backrest, and I'm going to pop the line out of the line clip. Then I'm going to tighten the clutch. There's no point in doing this movement with a loose clutch. I'm going to gently lift the back lead, wind down, give it a good hoik and wind it in. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to check that hook for burrs, just with my fingertips there. Doesn't feel too bad at all really. No matter where you're fishing, if you regularly find burrs on the hook, the likelihood is that you're doing it on the retrieve. So if you follow this procedure, get that lead flicked off the bottom, it should really cut down on the amount of damage that you do to a hook. So I've just done a little test on my fingers there. That feels okay, but there's no way that I would just put that out again until I'd looked at it carefully in some good light with a loop. Now I use an awful lot of bottom baits when I'm carp angling. When I'm putting my rods out for the night, it's generally bottom baits all the way. Now there are specific circumstances when I'll always use a pop-up. If I'm doing some day session work, mornings, afternoons, and I'm targeting showing fish, I'll always go for a pop-up. The reason is that I can cast that pop-up and I'm much more confident of the pop-up presenting over a range of bottom types, especially if I use something like a helicopter presentation. The other massive advantage with a pop-up is that I can give a spot a go for a few hours and say, I don't get that take. The fish may have moved, there may be more activity elsewhere, I might think that there's a better bet. It's really easy with a pop-up. I can just wind it in, quick check of the hook, recast out, and I'm back and I'm fishing. Pop-up presentations are less prone to picking up hook damage than bottom baits. It's just the way it is. So when I'm giving a spot a go for a few hours and then I want to wind in, I'll still use the wind down, flick the lead off the spot trick, but I'll check the hook. 9 times out of 10, that is absolutely going to be perfect. It was as good as it was when I put it out for the first try. When I go for the second try, I'm much more likely, 1, to get the pickup, and 2, to land the fish. Because the hook is sharp, it stayed sharp, and avoiding hook pulls is all about sharp hooks. I've seen time and time again that these simple tips and procedures can make a massive difference in reducing the number of hook pulls that people suffer. The key takeaways of reducing hook pulls are this. Make sure that your hooks are razor sharp to start with, so buy the best, double check them anyway, and store them carefully. When you go to use one, tie your rig carefully. Keep your rig stored in a box carefully. Tie it onto the swivel carefully. Clip it onto the rod carefully. It's all about the attention to detail. For me, it's these little details that make all the difference in the world. Hope you guys have enjoyed that video. As always, if you've got any questions or comments, do leave a message. I do try and respond to them all.